Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee Weather Show. It's the 2nd of May, 2019, and we are just about at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Going to cover a lot of different things tonight, and we're going to do it carefully to make sure I don't forget to open the window for you so you can see everything. But front and center is was, I think it's weakened a bit, but we have a Category 5 hurricane in the Indian Ocean, Cyclone Fani, F-A-N-I. And I pulled up, I have the latest satellite loop of it. Starts off looking very impressive. And you can find these satellite loops, by the way, this is off the ssd.noaa.gov, and they have the tropical section with floaters that they can move around so you can look at these various storms as tight as they can get them. And one of the things we're noticing here from the advisory that was issued, we had top winds of 135 knots, 165 miles an hour. This was a Category 5 hurricane that is moving inland. It's nearing Kolkata, India. I'm not really that familiar with that particular geography. This is on the east side of the of the peninsula, and that eye, you'll notice, really sharp, very well defined, and then it just kind of starts to fade, and that has to do with the fact that now a good chunk of the circulation is on land, and it looks like that eye is going to make landfall, I believe, near Kolkata. And this is what it looks like on the advisory. The forecast track, bringing it inland and then taking it to the northeast. And if you go to the side here, you can see the plot points that the forecast winds that are being indicated here. Tropical cyclone 01B Fani, F-A-N-I. This is warning number 24. It was at 18.3 north, 85 east, moving 015 or north-northeast at about 15 knots. I'll just move it there so you can see it. Top winds 135, gusting to 65, significant waves to 48 feet. And notice the numbers start to come down pretty rapidly as it moves inland. If I'm reading this correctly, Kolkata, it's 30 as of Tuesday, so that would be at 10 o'clock tonight, our time, Eastern time. It will be about 38 nautical miles from Kolkata. I believe that's how that is read. You can access this, by the way, if you go to Tropical Tidbits and go to current storms. Levi Cowan has really assembled a great tool here, and you should take advantage of it. But if you go to, on his site, if you go to current storms, you can pull down, whatever storms or invests that are out there, out in all around the world, be it in the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere. He's got them all on here as they develop. You can find all that information there, front and center. So this area in the, from my understanding, India is a nation of 1.3 billion people. It is the world's largest democracy, and we are seeing this Category 5 hurricane moving inland, and the population, there's about 250 million people that kind of occupy that whole strip there on the east side. So you're talking about this impacting a very, very large population that exists on that side of the of India. Again, I'm not really overly familiar with the storms there. It's only in recent years that we've really had solid access to information. The advisories, you had to really kind of look hard to find them, but now they're fairly easy to find. A quick Google search will get them for you. And of course, when our hurricane season gets busy, We're always try to be front and center with what goes on here in our neck of the woods in the Atlantic and in the East Pacific Basin. Now let's come back home and take a look at what's going on tonight. We've got some various severe thunderstorm watches up. There's actually also a tornado watch going in parts of northeastern Arkansas, northwest Tennessee, and into Missouri. And of course, you've got that whole stretch there of flood watches from northeast Texas right up through the middle Mississippi Valley and covering much of the state of Illinois as they're getting hit with showers and downpours and some thunderstorms. And with regards to where it's going rain-wise, WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, and their daily 7-day forecast map that I like to show, has a fairly extensive area of 3 to 5 inches of rain or more from northeast Texas right up through the mid-Mississippi Valley, going up into southern Indiana, western Kentucky, and then northeast from there, the rains tail off a bit, but you still have every bit of 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 inches from West Virginia on up into Pennsylvania and parts of New York State into the Catskills, almost but not quite touching New York City. Looks like some of that, the edge of the 2-inch area, 1.75 inches, 2 inches, goes into northwest New Jersey, and then of course you've got the lighter amounts as you start to go south, 1 inch to 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches from southeastern Pennsylvania up into Long Island and southern New England and through the rest of New York State. Rainfall amounts start to tail off a bit as you head up into New England. They also tail off somewhat as we head down into the southeast U.S. and down to Florida, although there is a little bit of a bulge there of 1 inch to 1.5 inches in southeast Florida. Some of that has to do with that disturbance that's been sitting near the Bahamas. Hasn't really developed into anything and probably won't, but that moisture, some of it is getting thrown back closer to the coastline. And the rainfall amounts really kind of tail off as you go west of the Rockies. There really isn't a whole lot happening up and down the west coast, with the exception of a small area in the Sierra Nevadas. Looks like the weather over the next 7 days through California, much of California, and it looks like all of Oregon and Washington seeing very little, if any, rainfall in the long-range period. So I'll bring up the U.S. satellite now, and then I'm going to go to the local satellite in the Northeast because it's pretty interesting what's happening today. But here's the look. You can see the tropical disturbance off the Florida coast. I don't even hesitate. It's not really, I wouldn't really call it a tropical disturbance. It's an inverted trough. And it's producing some showers and thunderstorms, but there's nothing organized here. You don't see any turning. It's just, the development of heavy convection during the day probably slackens off somewhat at night. You've got a good solid moisture feed coming in from the subtropical Pacific and heading into Mexico and Texas again, and on up into the Northeast. A lot of that moisture feeding up into the southern plains and on up through the middle Mississippi Valley and toward the Great Lakes. And of course, you've got cloud cover again to deal with in the Northeast as we got a bit of a break today, which was really nice. Saw temperatures zoom up even in coastal areas, a lot of spots getting up to the 70-degree mark. But I got to show you this satellite loop of the Northeast because it's pretty interesting here. If you want to see, we oftentimes we look at this stuff and we're always looking at thunderstorms, and sure, they're very impressive. But sometimes you really need to look at some things that perhaps don't get the same kind of headlines that severe weather does. But take a look, if you can see really close. I'm going to see if I can get really zoomed in tighter here. But take a look at Long Island. I have it in the center of the screen, and you can see the impact of the marine layer. Those clouds that are backing westward at the bottom, the low levels of the atmosphere, you've got the higher clouds moving from west to east. You've got those low clouds moving in from east to west, and then notice the blow-up of clouds across Delaware, down through Maryland and Washington, D.C., where we had a line of strong thunderstorms move on through, and those are moving from west to east. But that marine layer is very impressive. A lot of folks that I know that are along the south shore of Long Island had let me know today how around early afternoon, all of a sudden, the wall cloud of fog, and having lived out on Long Island for these last 30 years, in the spring, you can actually see it. You can see what looks like a very dark wall on a bright sunny day, and you look down toward the south shore, and you see this sort of black wall that's sitting there waiting for the push to come in. And if you go down toward the south shore, you can actually you watch it come in. It's fascinating to see. It's we sit there and we watch threatening skies with thunderstorms, but it's equally interesting to watch the wall cloud of the marine layer. But the bottom line is this is the impact of the time of year with the cold ocean. Even though the land is trying so desperately to warm, the cold ocean is formidable. And until you get those water temperatures at least up into the 60s, you have to deal with this sort of thing. The disparity, remember, you're talking about a 30 plus degree difference sometimes between the ocean water temperature and the land temperature. And in fact, as Scott Briller reminded me earlier, that it was 90 was the high temperature a year ago today in New York City, believe it or not. So I'm not quite sure how it turned out after that, but it goes as part of the conversation about what I was having yesterday on the Joe and Joe Weather Show with my colleague Joe Rayo, talking about the fact that this perception that it's been a cool spring, when in fact I looked at I looked around and looked at the climo data for the month of April for southern New England, around New York City, and down into southeastern Pennsylvania, and everybody averaged around the New York City area. Everybody averaged about 3 degrees above normal, and down in southeast PA, down to Delaware and southern New Jersey, 6 degrees above normal. Southeast New England, around Boston, generally about 1 to 3 degrees above normal. So this has been a warmer than average April, and unlike last year. So take a look at the temperatures, and about an hour ago they would have been more dramatic because there were still a lot of mid and upper 70s across interior New Jersey. They've since dropped off, but the 40s have come into Long Island, low 50s, mid 50s back through New York City, so that marine layer is working through it. And I have the latest radar echoes showing up here. So we've had some downpours and a couple of small thunderstorms developed out of northeastern Pennsylvania and moved eastward. They're now weakening as they move into this marine layer, but the high temperatures today along the coast even made it up close to 70, except for the east end, and it made it to the 60s in through southern New England, and upper 70s and low 80s down through southern New Jersey. Right now we've cooled off quite a bit down into the 70s, but this is more in response to sunset and the storms that passed by near the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. You can see what's left of those. East of D.C., across the Delmarva Peninsula, and then there's some heavy cells right now going on in southernmost New Jersey, down near Cape May. And we do still have a few residual warnings left up, some marine warnings that are still up. There were a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings that we saw earlier. Meanwhile, going out to the weather that's out in the middle Mississippi Valley, where we've got temperatures still in the upper 70s and low 80s. You see that little red box there. There's a working tornado warning here at 8:13 Eastern Time in northwestern Tennessee, and you can actually see the cell that's encased in that. Fairly impressive. And another severe thunderstorm warning up in, I believe that's out in Kentucky. I'm not trying to see if you put your mouse on this. You can, by the way, you can do this if you go to preview.weather.gov/EDD. It's the or just Google NWS Enhanced Data Display, and you can basically build your own maps. Temperatures into the 80s down through all of the Gulf states. Of course, you still got We got more rough weather going on in Texas today with this whole complex frontal system that is setting up, and you're going to see some severe weather action in that area. Let me just stop here for a minute, and we'll take a look at tonight's SPC map, and we'll see where all the risk areas are. Always, as I've said many times, it's coming up on 8:15 Eastern Time. If you're watching this on a replay, be sure to go to weather.gov and your local National Weather Service office to see the latest information, or go to spc.noaa.gov to their website on severe weather. So here are your risk areas tonight in Texas. You got that slight risk that runs into near Del Rio and into southwest Texas, and a bigger area of marginal risk out to the Texas coast. We've got a working severe thunderstorm watch back in the Texas risk area. We've got a working tornado watch up in northeastern Arkansas into western Kentucky, northwestern Tennessee, and that's embedded in an area of slight risk that goes on up into southern Ohio. Marginal risk to the outside of that, and a small area of marginal risk that covers New Jersey down to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. I think those cells have already passed their peak, and we're not going to be too concerned about what happens here on in, because I think all of that stuff is going to wind up falling apart. All right, now I'm going to bring this back up full screen so I don't make the same mistake I did yesterday. And why don't I bring up? I didn't bring up the radar tonight. So here's what it looks like. Here's the Texas weather, and window capture. Where are you? There we go. I had that window up. I don't know why it disappeared. All right, so here's the here's the area of storms right now, blossoming out in Texas, moving eastward. Looks like they're passing south of Dallas-Fort Worth and north and west of Houston. And then, of course, you've got the area in the middle Mississippi Valley, another nice-sized cluster there in southeastern Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, moving to the northeast. Some scattered heavy cells in central interior Kentucky, also some strong cells in eastern Kentucky, moving into West Virginia, western North Carolina, and then some also in southeastern Ohio. So all of that headed up to the northeast. And as we said, the weather that's going on in from Cape May, southern Delaware, to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area looks like it might be just past its peak intensity as that area moves to the east. And the storms and the downpours and small thunderstorms that formed in a couple of places up in northern New Jersey and in the Hudson Valley now moving over the north shore of Long Island and gradually weakening. So where are we going weather-wise going forward? Well, as far as risk is concerned for tomorrow, Texas once again, I think this is going to be the third or fourth day in a row with the slight risk over at least part of the state. And we're also dealing with a marginal risk for tomorrow in West Virginia, southern Pennsylvania, almost to the Jersey state line in the southeast corner, much of Maryland and northwestern Virginia, and down in Texas and into Louisiana, you got that larger area of marginal risk. There wasn't too much shown on the next day for Saturday, so I didn't really bother to bring that particular map up. So I think we'll just head to what the models are telling us going forward. And here we go. Let's bring this up here. So we all know, as we've talked about for days now, this blocking high that's sitting up over Greenland. You've got higher pressures all across the polar region. The jet stream displaced well to the south. You've got a low out there east of Newfoundland, what we call the 50-50 low. And you've got another upper low in northwest Canada that's driving cooler air into Canada. So gradually, as we go through the weekend and into next week, you're still going to see this jet displaced to the south. You still have, in early next week, a blocking high sitting over Greenland. It does slowly begin to weaken as we go through next week, but you're still going to have some semblance of the jet being displaced south of normal and a bit busier than normal. So that continues pretty much all next week. and we might have to really wait till after the middle of the month to finally get it out of here. But you're still seeing some hints of it going into mid-month. And then suddenly you have this upper high in Western Canada. So I don't know how this is going to change. You still have troughing that shows up in the eastern part of the United States. The teleconnections, aren't exactly anything to write home about. I think they just sort of amplify a lot of uncertainty here. Your Pacific North America index, which is deeply negative right now, goes up to neutral. So that at least says that the trough in the west is going to weaken and the ridge in the east is going to weaken a bit as well. But it just kind of stays flat near the neutral line after May 8th, right through May 17th. The NAO is somewhat negative. It's on the strong side, going through until about May 7th or 8th, and then gets back to about the neutral line and starts to trend a little negative toward the end of the period. Remember, these are snapshots off the GFS ensemble model, so they're going to change. These are done once a day off the 0Z run from last night. Every day they adjust to whatever the models adjust to, so they're really just giving you a sort of a broad snapshot of what the upper air pattern is going to be. And the EPO, which, as I've said many times, that's one you do want to pay attention to in the wintertime because that seems to drive the cold, is running negative. When it's negative, that usually favors cooler air coming into the eastern part of the northeastern part of the United States at least, and back through the Great Lakes and the plains. Well, you've got that in a negative mode pretty much for the next week and a half, and then kind of trends toward neutral around mid-month. So I guess we really need to see that EPO go positive in a strong way, and not just get back to the neutral line in order to change things a bit here in the Northeast. And it would be nice to see that NAO go away. But as the winter weather lovers have pointed out, in frustration about the fact that this shows up now and it's not during the heart of the winter time, and that's because spring is known for blocking. You've got a complete, breakdown of the polar vortex, breakdown of the strong upper air winds. So this is a time where weather systems kind of get cut off from the main westerlies. You get upper highs that start to build further north, up into the North Atlantic, and you wind up displacing the jet, south of normal. And of course, that puts us at risk for all sorts of things regarding day-to-day weather, from low clouds and fog to even severe weather. So let's take a look at what the GFS has to offer here on the surface. And once again, here in the Northeast, it's about cold fronts, warm fronts that try to move north only to get forced back south. And when we look at the surface map tonight, and I'm going to come back to the GFS, but look at what's happened here. Now, this warm front attempted to push north of New York City and had some success, but now it's come back the other way, and we're going to see it drop even further south as we go through the night. So this was a nice one-day appearance of temperatures in the upper 70s and low 80s from New York City west and south anyway. The marine air that was here last night and this morning was a relatively shallow marine layer. It wasn't one that was really stubborn. There was no big, strong high to the northeast, kind of wedging in that cool marine air. So this warm front had a much easier time getting through, even in places where the warm front didn't really make it. The low cloud deck was fairly thin, so the sun was able to just kind of burn it off. But now we're going to be going back to the low clouds for tonight and tomorrow, from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England down through New Jersey. This frontal boundary actually gets down to about the Delmarva Peninsula, and there's a low coming Friday there in southern West Virginia. So the front is going to try to go back again northward. I don't know how far north it's going to get because it's going to get cut off by this wave moving and a cold front coming through. So we may see some showers here tomorrow night. And of course, you'll notice that there's a lot of energy going on back through Texas and in the lower Mississippi Valley. From this, another low comes out for Sunday. And it's a little bit slower, so perhaps we could see some improvement in my neck of the woods during the afternoon on Saturday, only to see clouds and maybe some rain here for later Saturday night into Sunday afternoon before this low pulls away to the northeast. The Europeans are particularly aggressive with the rain amounts, showing a 1 to 2 inch soaking rain event here for Saturday night and Sunday. And then after that goes out, maybe a bit of a break on Monday, though there is another cold front coming down to the north. You see those showers through the Great Lakes and on up through the St. Lawrence Valley. That front is weak, and the showers don't really hold together very well. But now you also have some energy coming out into the Rockies there with low pressure moving out of Colorado and into Nebraska with some rain and snow up in the northern plains. This is for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. That looks to go further west, so we might look out here. I don't know about sky condition because that's always going to be an issue regarding whether the flow is onshore enough or not. But we could wind up having reasonably dry weather other than a passing shower, say Monday evening or Monday night. We may wind up with some reasonably dry weather here until about, I don't know, late Wednesday night, maybe Thursday, when another cold front comes through. And then, of course, the GFS has another wave right behind it for next Friday. But look, the bottom line is you've got a very blocky signature, and you have a very blocky signature up in the North Atlantic, and that is creating problems. Even though you've got a ridge trying to build in the east, the lower levels of the atmosphere, it's a whole different world, and that has created problems. And now as we go through next week, there's still more energy dropping down into the west and the plains and in the southwest, and we're going to have to just see which jet dominates. There's a tendency here late in the forecast period where the northern part of the jet stream may want to dominate a bit more later next week. So that might bode for better conditions. What I'm getting at is it's going to rain during this month, clearly. Let's settle for the possibility that maybe that we could squeeze in 2 back-to-back dry days in between weather events and not have to deal with this sort of endless onshore flow, northeast winds, marine layer, where you sit in cloudy skies all day. That's been my big problem with it is I don't really mind so much if it rains. It's when you get these days and days and days of cloudy skies and you get a little light rain or drizzle, and it's just very damp and depressing, but it doesn't necessarily pour rain, but just the fact that you don't have any sun is it's not fun. Okay, it just simply is not fun. All right, coming to the chat board there. Johnny Question, made yourself a BLT. That's a good thing. I like BLTs too. Javon Perry had thunder and lightning early this morning at 2 to 3 a.m. Where the warm front was, it actually set up better for you. There were some downpours and a few thunderstorms this morning on the radar early along I-90 across New York State and right through parts of Massachusetts. So you got to taste what warm fronts do sometimes, is trigger off a thunderstorm as they try to go by. Patricia Owens, we have 3 rescue dogs and one of them is totally freak out with a thunderstorm. I like a good thunderstorm, like a lot of others do, as long as we don't lose power. I may have mentioned before about the fact, Patricia, when my dog was around, my Springer Spaniel, he wasn't afraid of thunderstorms. He used to run. He would want to go outside while thunderstorms were going on, and he would try to run toward the lightning, barking at it as if to say, this sort of very angry, defiant look on his face, that as if to say, you don't belong here, you need to go away. And he never, it was just kind of funny because a lot of my friends that have dogs, a lot of them are terrified about thunderstorms, terrified of thunderstorms, but yet my dog was not. He used to, just like I said, he used to try to chase them. Water temps in the Atlantic are a little warmer than last year. Do you think it would influence the hurricane season? The El Nino is pretty weak. I'd be really cautious to draw conclusions about water temperatures now as opposed to water temperatures 2 months from now, because one of the things that I've noticed is the ocean water temperatures can be pretty volatile and change on a dime. All it takes is one good storm to get out there, a non-tropical storm someplace, to create rough seas and upwelling, and suddenly your above normal temperatures are suddenly below normal, or the reverse. After an upwelling period, cool water, you get a storm-free stretch of weather, and where ocean waters are relatively calm, and suddenly your water temperatures start to pop. So if you recall, last year there was all this talk about, a lot of talk about the cooler than normal ocean water that existed from all along the tropical Atlantic back to the African coast and out to the Leeward Islands and north of 20 degrees north. And then that kind of just disappeared as we moved into the month of August. So I'd just be really careful to draw too many conclusions about seeing warm water temperatures now, and because that may not necessarily be the case relative to normal come 2 months from now or 3 months from now. William Ubert was driving south on the top of Bald Hill. It's 440 feet above sea level there. It's about 3 miles east of me. And yes, you could see the whole outline of the marine layer on the south shore from that viewpoint. And you can watch it just come rolling in. It's really kind of cool to see if you haven't. Michael Azara, your temp went from 80 to 65 in Trenton when that ocean wind kicked in. A lot of areas saw big temperature drops in a big hurry. Charles Baker, you got a new GPS, entered Lake Johnny Quest. Very good, Charles. Yeah, he actually, Johnny, you've been lacking in the rainfall department lately, which I don't think you'll be complaining about. Chris Alley, I know you were watching the fog bank coming in today for sure. And any thoughts on the tropical storm season starting early? Well, Paul, look, we've had an early start to. We've had a May tropical storm form in 3 out of the last 4 seasons. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. You got this disturbance off the southeast coast that's not going to really do very much of anything. Excuse me. But could there be something that forms somewhere out there? Sure. But I'd be really. There's nothing that I could lean to say that the odds are favorable for an early season tropical storm. We had one last year. I think it happened toward the end of the month. I got to write when I do my research. I try to I always forget. I need to write this stuff down because my memory ain't what it used to be. But I'll say this: if the El Nino stays weak, you're going to see. You'll probably see. At the very least, you'll see an average season on the Atlantic side, and maybe it'll go slightly above average. The other thing I would just be careful of is going forward in the next few weeks, you're going to start seeing weather models begin their usual, let's spin up a Category 5 hurricane on day 16 of the long range, or as far as the Canadian goes, it only goes out 10 days on day 10 of the Canadian model. So we can sort of dispense with the formalities here and just say right off the bat we will ignore it. Okay, we'll just ignore those things. All right. So got to call it a night at this point, folks. Thanks very much for being here. Again, let me remind you, if you are watching this on a replay, we're just at 8:32 Eastern time here. So if you're watching this on a replay and you're seeing that severe weather, obviously it's dated, so you want to go to your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov and make sure you have the absolute latest information regarding severe weather. Be sure to tune in if you're on Facebook tonight. About 9:25, we'll have the Joe and Joe Weather Show with my colleague Joe Rayo. And for those of you who don't have Facebook, we can upload it to YouTube, and you can watch it if everything works out. It should be up there, and you'll get a notification from YouTube probably around 10 o'clock Eastern time. All right, everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.